Hello everyone, I'm Zath and welcome back to my channel. Today's video will be my top 10 manga titles I started reading in 2022. This video doesn't consist of the only manga titles I enjoyed, just the ones that stood out the most as I look back on what I read last year. So now sit back, relax, and without further ado, let's talk about some manga. Before we begin, I just want to highlight an honorable mention that just barely didn't make the list. This was the hardest list to make since I've been making top 10 lists. I just started reading so many good manga in 2022. Despite me hating 99.9% of the overplayed zombie stories, I guess it's a 99.8% now, with The Last of Us TV adaptation, and Zomb 100 Bucket Lists of the Dead, which surprised me with its colorful stylistic covers, and a story that subverts the typical end-of-the-world tropes we've seen 1,000 times. Instead of seeing the end of the world as the end of everything, our main character, Akira, shakes off his wage slave collar and decides to make a list of all the things he wants to do before becoming a zombie. A simple premise that successfully executes a story about being true to yourself, along with some comedy. If you want to laugh and see a different kind of zombie story, I recommend picking this up. Currently, there are 8 volumes released in English. At number 10, we have High School Debut by Kazun Kawahara. With 13 volumes, this is a completed series. The story is about a girl named Haruna who gives it 110%, whether it's being the ace pitcher of her softball team or trying to find a boyfriend. Of course, all good players need good coaches, so she asked the hottest guy at her high school to be her relationship coach. I really enjoyed a lot of things in this manga. There was a good helping of slice of life and comedy that actually had me laughing out loud. Some people may agree with me that this manga overstays its welcome a bit. But if you are a shoujo fan, or want a main character with some backbone, and I mean literal backbone as Haruna punches some bully in the face, pick up a copy of High School Debut. At number 9 is Let's Go Karaoke by Yama Wayama. This was my first manga by Yama Wayama, and I know they say not to judge a book by its cover, but this cover did an excellent job of bringing this series to my attention. The story is about serious Yakuza members trying hard to avoid getting Hello Kitty faces tattooed on their hands if they lose their boss's annual karaoke tournament. No, seriously, that is the base premise. One specific Yakuza member named Kyoji is all about hitting the books to study up and semi-kidnaps a middle school choir student named Satomi for help. When more Yakuza find out that Satomi has given lessons to Kyoji, more Yakuza join in. As you expect, with tough-looking Yakuza trying to polish their vocal cords, comedy ensues. On a more serious note, pun intended, Satomi discovers that change can be a good thing and starts to be more honest with himself and his surroundings. Art is in the eye of the beholder, so some of you may not want to give this a try based on its art style. However, I really liked the older art style, and how well it blends with the tone of the overall story. I don't want to spoil too much of this story, but if you like comedy, slice of life, and drama in your stories, pick this one up. Number 8 is Tokyo Revengers by Ken Wakui. I technically started this series digitally before the print version became available, but it still makes the list. To comment first on the print versions, I hate omnibuses. Still hate them. Really nothing will ever make me like softback omnibuses. They're so clunky to read. I understand why publishers want to save money, but would it really kill you to just print one volume at a time? Getting back on track to the actual review, Tokyo Revengers is about a man named Hanagaki Takemichi, whose claim to fame was that he was a little delinquent back in his middle school days. Yikes. Now, as an adult, he works at a dead-end job with no ambition. On the news one night, he finds out that his ex-girlfriend has been killed in gang violence, and then later he's pushed onto the train tracks. Instead of dying or being isekai'd to another world, he wakes up in the past as his young, delinquent middle school self to relive his glory days. Except, not quite. Turns out, he needs to infiltrate a badass gang and somehow stop a lot of people from dying, including himself. I love timey-wimey shenanigans, probably more than most people, but when you combine this premise with a compelling plot and some absolutely badass fights, well, it's on the list, so you know I enjoyed it. If you like seeing some punks getting into fights, time traveling, or things that make you actually tear up while reading, I suggest you give this a try. At number 7 is Real by Takahiko Inoue. I love sports anime and manga, but Real takes it one step further. Its story centralizes around 3 characters. Nomiya, a high school dropout that caused a girl to become paralyzed in a motorcycle accident. Tagawa, who's a track star before being diagnosed with bone cancer, shattering his dreams of the future. And Takahashi, a cocky basketball star who didn't appreciate what he had until he lost it. Each character suffers trauma, pain, and hardship, but the one thing that connects them all is their love of basketball. Real is a story that I didn't think I would like as much as I did, and to spoil any of it would be a disservice to you. We all face challenges in our daily lives, and this is a manga about facing adversity and rising above and beyond it. I couldn't stop reading this series until I had all 15 volumes in my hand. Unfortunately, the story remains unfinished, and perhaps this might be all we see of Real. However, you should give this story a try regardless. If you've ever had your back against a wall, and you just didn't think you could go any further, but ended up finding a way, then I think you'll see that reflection in its pages. Sometimes, when we think we have it bad, there's always someone struggling more. But we're never alone. At number 6, we have Cherry Magic. 30 Years of Virginity Can Make You a Wizard? By Yu Toyota. Now, before you skip this section, let me just preface this with this manga is actually more wholesome than you think. The story is about a man named Adachi, who after turning 30 and being a virgin, discovers he now has the power to read minds. Luckily for him, it's not like Professor X, and he is limited to just reading the minds of those around him. At first, he really hates this power, as most people around him have very negative or hateful thoughts. That is, until one day he bumps into his handsome coworker, Kurosawa, in the elevator, and finds out that Kurosawa likes him. Like may be an understatement, as Kurosawa is a mastermind of having a straight face while thinking of just how adorable Adachi's hair looks. It's true though. This is a bit of a slow burn. Even though Kurosawa really likes Adachi, he doesn't overstep himself and waits for Adachi to say just exactly what he wants. There is a slice-of-life element as both characters learn more about one another, and it's really, really cute. On top of the enjoyable main characters, Adachi's friend Suge has turned out to be one of my favorites, despite only seeing him in the bonus chapters. We're given just enough information about him to care and want to see him step out of his own shell. He is also so adorable, and his side romance, I am waiting for it. This BL rom-com teases us, but develops its characters so that the relationships feel believable and realistic. Well, besides the whole mind reading thing. I recommend picking the series up if you enjoy watching characters get to know one another before jumping headfirst into bed. Entering the second half of this list, at number 5, we have Kaiju number 8, by Noya Matsumoto. If you've been watching my channel, you know this is one of my favorite current ongoing shonen titles. Just below Moriarty the Patriot, which, if you're not reading, you should because it's the best and you should support it so that I can read more of the series and its light novels. Kaiju number 8 follows the story of Kafka Habino, a middle-aged man whose job is to clean up kaiju remains after the Defense Force dispatches them. Think Pacific Rim, but having to clean up those monsters' remains from the city so that normal people can go about their day jobs. While Kafka is not trying to cancel the apocalypse, his childhood dream was to protect people from kaiju. Now he's just cleaning up after them. I mean, honestly, Kafka shouldn't be so hard on himself. Disposing of giant monsters sounds like a seriously difficult job. You'd have to have a stomach of steel. One day, Kafka gets another chance to follow his dreams when he becomes a kaiju himself. By now, you probably don't have to have me tell you how awesome this series is. From stylistic artwork, to epic fight scenes, to wholesome character bonding. This series has it all. Kafka isn't your typical shonen protagonist. He's in his 30s and knows what it feels like to give up once already. He can be goofy at times, but when the chips are down, he's downright badass. If you're a fan of shonen action, or maybe want to see an older main character, I recommend diving into Kaiju number 8. At number 4 is My Love Mix-Up, by Wataru Hakun and Aruko. Have you ever experienced a misunderstanding? Something so miscommunicated it embarrassed you to no end? Well, that's the premise of My Love Mix-Up. A huge misinterpretation between two boys over an eraser leads to a closer friendship and eventually an actual relationship. Young love. Most people may want to pass over this series as just another BL or worried about a bait love triangle. I'm here to tell you, friends, that you're in good hands. Not only does this story avoid horrible pitfalls of love triangle tropes, but it handles its relationships with care. These are high school students who are experiencing these feelings for the first time. The art style is amazing, and each and every face that Aoki makes will have you laughing. If you like to read a story about friends being a little different and falling in love, start reading My Love Mix-Up. At number 3, we have Erased by KaizanBlu. I watched the Erased anime a while ago, but never knew it was a manga until I stumbled upon it while browsing for new series. While I'm not opposed to double dipping on both anime and manga, I was immediately surprised by how different and more in-depth the manga dove into its story. For those not familiar with Erased, the story is about a man named Satoru, who finds it difficult to relate to those around him. During his childhood, his town was the epicenter of a group of kidnappings, and his mother went out of her way to try to repress the memory. One day, an incident triggers him to regain the memories he lost. Satoru isn't just an adult with memory problems. He also has a special ability he calls Revival, which allows him to go back in time and replay a specific time frame to spot an anomaly or something wrong. Basically, he can hit rewind for a few minutes and stop something bad from happening. Well, to everyone but himself. This special gift comes with a price, and it never ends well for Satoru himself. I don't want to spoil this story's mystery, but you'll be on the edge of your seat. I loved the anime, but the manga just cranks everything up to 10. But hey, that Asian Kung Fu Generation opening still slaps. Yen Press also published this series in English in some beautiful hardbacks, so they look great on your shelves and are sturdy enough to read. If you enjoy psychological thrillers with a dab of the supernatural, Erased is the manga for you. At number 2, which really was neck and neck for the top spot this year, is The Savior's Book Cafe, Story in Another World. This manga is based on a light novel by Hyoka Izumi. We see a lot of isekai stories, but a reluctant protagonist who doesn't want to go on the hero's journey is rare. And a female protagonist at that. I'm pretty sure it's been since From Far Away that I read a female lead in an isekai. That is exactly the premise of The Savior's Book Cafe, Story in Another World. Tsukina, our leading lady, is transported to another world by a strange orb calling itself God. However, she doesn't want to go. She's a middle-aged woman who would rather sit at home reading books than go on an adventure. And who could really blame her? However, God isn't going to take no for an answer, and off she goes, but not without getting some sweet loot to make her stay more comfortable. Tsukina hides her savior status and opens up a cozy little book cafe, where she can read all the books she wants. Of course, she doesn't spend all her time alone. Her first patron, Captain of the Knights and fellow book enthusiast, Il, starts spending as much time as he can at her little book cafe hideaway. Il is an A-tier male lead. I love how they balanced his serious demeanor and character design with his softer side. And when both Il and Tsukina sit down to comfortably read together, truly it's peak relationship goals. This series has been fantastic so far. It executes a simplistic idea to make a worthwhile story. With only one last volume to be released, I will be heartbroken to see it go. However, this heartwarming series will stick with me long after I've read the final volume. If you're wanting to read a story that will leave you smiling, give this one a try. And finally, at number 1 is Golden Kamuy by Satoru Noda. Whether I was laughing, crying, or jumping to my feet with excitement, this series has it all. The story takes place after the Russo-Japanese War, and follows a veteran named the immortal Saichi Sugimoto, as he becomes embroiled in a quest to find a hidden stash of Ainu gold. The location of the gold can only be revealed by collecting pieces of the map, which are tattooed on escaped prisoners' skin. So not only must Sugimoto battle some tough baddies, but he has to keep enough of their bodies intact to read their skin. He teams up with an Ainu girl named Aspera, who has her own reasons for hunting the gold. This unlikely duo will cross the entire country of Japan on their quest. With a very colorful cast of characters and danger around every turn, Sugimoto and Aspera will be pushed to the limit to survive and find the gold. This manga pulls no punches in its violence, so be mindful of that parental advisory warning. It was one crazy adventure after the other. The comedy is excellent, but be careful. One moment you'll be laughing, and the next you'll be pulling your hat down saying it's raining indoors. I binge read all 26 volumes that were released last year. This series recently wrapped up in Japan at 31 volumes. Currently, there are 28 volumes out in English. I plan to read both of them together because it will have to keep me for a while. If you're a fan of historical manga, action-adventure, comedy, survival, cooking, or just looking for an awesome, badass main lead to follow, you should start reading Golden Kamuy. And that, my friends, is my top 10 titles I personally started reading in 2022. Thank you so much for watching. What were some of your own favorite titles you added to your library last year? Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you all in the next video. I'm Zath. Have a good day.